Hey there, good morning, my friends. It's Thursday morning on week 2 of COVID-19 lockdown. I hope that you're not going too stir crazy just yet. I want to openly admit before I start this morning that physics was not my strongest subject while I was in high school. Actually, now that I think about it, I'm not sure I even had a strong subject. But I do recall Newton's first law of motion, and it states objects at rest tend to stay at rest, and objects in motion tend to stay in motion at the same speed and in the same direction unless acted upon by an outside force. The fact is that we are creatures of habit, and we tend to get set in our ways, especially the older that we get. Whether those ways are positive or negative, when we find a place of comfort and contentment, we are likely to remain there until some outside force can compel us and convince us to move. Perhaps the most prominent character of the New Testament outside of Jesus Christ was a prolific leader and visionary by the name of Paul, and I think he can help us when we talk about this issue of physics. Actually, at our first introduction, his name is Saul, and he is terrifying. He's a figure that is persecuting those that are preaching about Jesus Christ. And in Acts chapter 8, verse 3, Saul is described as ravaging the church, and that word there is used to define violent actions of war. And so the Bible tells us that this Paul was zealous and he was persecuting the church, thinking that he was doing the right thing. And had there been no outside force to act upon his life, he would have continued, no doubt, to violently oppose the growing church. But Acts chapter 9 informs us that while he's on a road leading to Damascus, that outside force absolutely did affect him. And we find that this outside force, it appears as a bright light, an audible voice, but it would soon be introduced and be identified as none other than Jesus, the very one whose preaching Paul had been working to eradicate. The outside force of the power of Jesus Christ would absolutely alter and change the direction of Paul's life, and he would become one of the greatest proponents and propagators of the gospel of Jesus Christ. This experience had brought about an unmistakable and an undeniable shift in Paul's life. Many years back, I can think of such an example that Paul exhibits in more of a practical way and even humorous way. When I was learning to drive, my training took place in a manual transmission Nissan 200 SX. Manual transmission being the key words here. Not only was I learning the nuances of navigating traffic and timing turns and obeying road signs, but I was also dealing with the challenge of moving the car forward without giving my passengers whiplash. And I can recall that once I had finally figured out how to get the car moving forward, as I began focusing on merging into traffic and the vehicles around me, the engine of the car would start sounding as if it were about to explode, and my dad would patiently but firmly remind me that it was time to shift gears because my increased momentum called for an additional shift. Today, you may feel like your life has veered down some paths that you never intended to go down. Maybe you find yourself battling regret or remorse, or perhaps you are what Newton described as an object at rest. Maybe you found yourself lacking motivation or desire in your life. My hope is that in some way this crazy crisis that we all find ourselves in will be that outside force that will nudge you to shift. I want to challenge you to use this time to lean forward into the destiny that has been prepared for your life. Reset some priorities and renew some relationships, and most of all, reconnect with God. Sometimes frustration and dissatisfaction are simply God's way of letting you know it's time to shift gears. God bless you. I'll see you soon.